Morning.
Bernie and Joanne online.
Okay, great.
Yes, indeed.
There. Who's in the meeting?
Brenda.
Janet, Steve, Charlene, and Norma.
Oh, okay.
And
'Cause we
Amy.
never know when people are on.
And
the
well,
phone.
and Amy from the committee, yes.
Okay.
And Amy and me.
We got a full house then.
Foolish.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Well, yeah, Ryan and Ken aren't here, but.
Renee Mabry's in.
Right. Okay, so let's get started at 9 o'clock. First item is approval of the minutes. It looks like we have 2 months worth of minutes to approve, and those were both sent out to everybody. So entertain a motion to first act on the June 6th, 2023 minutes. Steve makes a motion to approve. Any seconds? Second. Norma seconds. Any discussion on the June 6th minutes? All in favor of approving them? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we can move on to the July 14th regular meeting minutes. Can somebody make a motion, please?
Joanne will. I will approve.
Okay, Joanne motions to approve. Any seconds? Steve seconds. Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor of approving them?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, our minutes are approved. Item 3, correspondence.
Was there any relevant correspondence? No.
Okay. Item 4, citizens' comments. There's no citizens in the room, and I
None on the
don't
Zoom.
see any on the Zoom. So I guess we'll launch right into 5 committee business. First item is the Connecticut DECD Community Investment Fund Grant application.
Was submitted on the due date. I remain cautiously optimistic, not least because right before I went on vacation, they sent me a series of questions. So that to me indicates that they're reading it. You know, it is what it is. It's a $3.88 million request. I think it was a strong application. We had a very strong suite of support letters. Interestingly, despite the 11 that I sent in, one of the things they asked for was a support letter from Gumpert, which he turned around the same day that they asked. I think they just wanted to sort of close that loop, and you know, now we wait. The notification is supposed to be the end of September. So end of September, early October, nothing's ever on time. And then we'll know. And if we do find out, we will shout it from the rooftops.
Have a party. Great. Thanks for that update. Anybody have any other questions for Kira about that?
I will say if they choose to award less than the full amount, the thing I think that is the weakest part of the application is the parks, the 2 parks. But that, and I think that's just because we aren't as detailed in what we have over there. But I'm already planning on either resubmitting this. What happens if they turn you down is they give you feedback. So if it's a matter of, we just thought it was weak in these places, I'll turn it around into the next round. But if it's a partial award, then I can submit in later rounds, and there's going to be a total of 8 rounds. And that is actually a part of the plan anyway, to submit in a couple of later rounds to wrap some other things up. So we'll just tack it on somewhere else if they don't give us that funding. At least that's my plan.
Sounds like a good plan. So that the next item on the agenda, the River Mill 25-year tax assessment bad ordinance. I wasn't at the meeting last month, so I just put that on. And just to make sure that all the members are familiar with it, like if you didn't go to the public information meeting that the Economic Development Commission can on, because it is very important to the development of the mill. Does everybody know about this?
No, I could use some explanation, please.
Okay.
So the best summary is that the developer is seeking a certain length of time for an assessment, incentive, or abatement. The measures that we have in town that exist only get him to 17 or 18 years, and he's looking for 25. The only method that we can put in place to get him to 25 is essentially to adopt something like a blight ordinance. But we all know what the difficulties with blight ordinances have been in town. So I sort of went back and forth with Attorney Slater a little bit, and there's sort of a term of art in some planning called VAD structures, which is vacant, abandoned, and sometimes it's construed as delinquent, sometimes it's construed as dilapidated structures. So what I did was I wrote an ordinance which uses the blight standards, but is only applicable essentially in our urbanized areas. So routes 12 and 131 plus Main Street, the TCDD and the DMRD in our zoning districts. And we've specifically included owner occupied 1, 2, and 3 family residences, and we've specifically excluded agricultural properties from potential enforcement. So really, you're talking about large multifamilies with absentee landlords and commercial buildings that could be subject to this. And it builds in not just enforcement action, but the ability to assign an incentive up to 25 years. So passing this at town meeting is going to be pretty critical. And the Board of Selectmen is taking that up at their meeting on Tuesday. I would say it would be beneficial if any members of this committee are able to make public comment in that meeting in support, because you could bet your bippy there's going to be some people who come out to complain about it, whether they've read it or not. So
This coming up Tuesday?
yes, and I am not available on Tuesdays, so I will not be in the meeting to give any explanation, but I did send a memo along with comments received. I did receive some late comments this morning from Valerie Clark, to which I am responding, and I will send that response as an addendum to my memo to you guys when I'm done responding to her. Not terrible points, but just late. And that's that. So super important that we get that passed at the end of the month.
What time is that meeting?
7 o'clock for Tuesday's meeting, with hopefully plans to move to town meeting on August 30th. 7 o'clock also.
I know that I have a meeting in Plainfield that evening, so maybe, is it on, it's on Zoom too, right? Are they hybrid?
Oh, the selectmen meeting.
Right.
Yes.
The
Yeah,
select meeting is
absolutely.
hybrid, so maybe if anybody wants to comment, that would be great. I would, except I'm not gonna be.
This only covers Route 12, 131 and Main.
Right, so it's two districts, the Thompson Corridor Development District, which is the routes 1 to 131 and 12 corridors, and the Downtown Mill Rehabilitation District, which is Route 12, but also the Main Street Loop. So it's any property that fronts on any of those 3 streets is in one of those 2 districts.
So why wouldn't they want that to happen if we're already, people are complaining or upset about the way that they're mad because things are falling apart, and we're talking about trying to get a fence fixed for 6 years in front of that stupid Beldings thing, and so you would think it would only enhance Thompson instead of, why would they fight against that?
So that I would say, it is my observation that is the fundamental conflict between a lot of things. There are people who recognize that there are measures that you can take to get the results that you want, and there are people who respond with anxiety that all that means is the town's going to come after me and my property, right? And
Right, if you're a slob, they are.
and one of those arguments is emotional, and one of those arguments is rational. And it's very difficult to make inroads on people who are reacting to an issue emotionally. If they have convinced themselves that the town is out to get them, it doesn't matter if you say the town's not out to get them, they're going to believe it.
Mm.
So the VAD ordinance specifically states owner occupied 1, 2, and 3 family residences and agricultural properties
Right.
are not subject to this. 85% of those properties are outside the 2 zones anyway. So it is as narrow an ordinance as I could write and still have it have any function beyond applying it to a single building, which I don't like spot zoning and I don't like spot ordinances,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
It's got to have a purpose. We may not have a specific property that is a target or on a list, but if a similar situation comes up in the future where it's important to redevelop something and this is the way we get it done, we'll have that tool in the box.
But Tira, are you saying you won't be able to attend this town meeting, or was it?
Oh, no, the
different-
town meeting I will, not the
Okay.
Board of Selectmen meeting. Tuesday nights are a very difficult night for me.
Okay,
Nice to move it to town meeting.
Is there gonna be comments accepted? Like I could write a letter. I can't be there in person Tuesday, like, or.
Technically, the public comment period closed yesterday, but if we
Oh,
get one,
sorry.
if you get one to us, we'll get it. It'll just be late.
Send it
Read
to
it.
correspondence.
You could send it to correspondence and I could read it if
Okay.
you asked. to read
All
it,
right,
if you can't be
yeah,
there.
then I guess I'd like to do that.
So-
And I will say, that besides Tira's explanation, which was very good right here, I think that the Villager article was actually a pretty accurate article, it seemed like, in describing so for people who like to maybe read something and not just hear it described to them, I cut it out, but unfortunately I didn't put the date. It was probably from
That's last week's edition.
just last week.
Yeah, so that's from the 4th of August.
So if
Yeah.
anybody wants to just like go online, and the article is called Thompson provides update on River Mill development, there is a good article that explains the ordinance pretty clearly.
And I mean, I just want to say that I think it's really the crucial piece to really get the ball rolling.
Mm.
Without this in place, things could potentially fall apart, in my opinion. Additionally, from this point of having the ordinance in place, we move forward towards an agreement with the developer, with Camden Management. And that development, in that agreement, it will state a timeline for completion, and that will be music to my ears, and I think everybody's ears.
And it'll answer a lot of questions people keep asking. Well, we don't see any movement.
Right.
When is this gonna happen? It's gonna spell it all out. The biggest hurdle we're gonna have on the town meeting is going to be what was proposed back in 15 with the blight ordinance. And people reflecting on that, because it encompassed the whole town.
Yeah, well,
That's what they're gonna think is gonna be the problem, that this is the segue leading to
It's
what they
defining, right.
rejected, and that will change it accordingly.
well,
You
that
gotta
that
put
should
in
be a
conception.
very easy argument to disarm because it is not the same ordinance. It is very clear the ways in which it is different. I've read that 2015 ordinance and, I applaud the effort to get it passed, but it didn't have the incentives. It was not as clearly written as I would have liked. This one is very clear. It's been reviewed by council and it's narrow without being useless.
do we know what degree of tax abatement is gonna be offered for those 25 years?
Yes, yeah, there's a sliding scale. The first 10 years, the assessment value is frozen at the current value. The next 5 years, the assessment increases to 25% of the improved value, bumps another 25% for the following 5 years, and so on and so forth, until in year 26, he's fully taxed on the full assessed rehabilitated value. And the rough estimate is that we go from around $30,000 a year in taxes during the abated period, gradually stepping up until by year 26, it's somewhere between $700,000 and $800,000 a year.
Okay, thanks.
Norma, you had a question?
Yeah, will there be any assistance to those who need renovations or repair to their homes that live in that area?
So I would say that's a different thing than the VAD ordinance. Now, I will say that if it was a case like the 6-unit building that was in such terrible shape for a while. Now, they already have, multifamily properties already have the ability to access an assessment freeze or abatement that gets them to the 17 or 18 years. They have to apply for it to assist in that case. So that would be the same in this, if it was a larger property where the amount of the renovations proposed was in the millions, they would also have that access to the incentives in the VAD ordinance. But the kind of direct assistance that you're talking about, we talked about that during the ARPA process. And when we scored it based on community input, that came at the bottom with some of the nastiest comments you have ever read in your life. There was very little appetite within the town for assisting homeowners in need directly. I was very disappointed in that result myself. There are other ways that homeowners can get some assistance, notably through 0 or low interest loans from USDA, because we count as a rural population based on our population size and density. And there's some others here and there. A lot of them are through United Way, but the VAD ordinance is not the mechanism for that.
And after the town meeting, do they think that's gonna go to a referendum?
No, it's just that town meeting.
Ordinance is passed at town meeting.
Okay.
And then how, is there a way to, I know like misinformation gets out way before the correct information gets out. So is there any way to like avert that, like get the correct information out there instead of?
Well, the draft is published
Okay.
and we've had good coverage in the
Villager.
like really good coverage in the Villager. There were probably 80 people at that meeting. Now, the people who are most likely to oppose it weren't at the meeting, aren't reading those things, and we can't reach them.
Okay.
But I would say the general populace has been generally receptive, not necessarily without some reservations, but the questions were mostly good at that presentation. And we did our best to be clear. I will say this, I haven't seen a lot of pushback in the social media world. I haven't seen a lot of complaints about it.
Okay.
So I say cautiously optimistic about a lot of things.
All right.
I think once the town meeting is set, that's when it'll start.
Probably. And I think the plan is for Slater to come back and maybe Pam too. We haven't really figured that out yet. To answer any of those questions, but it's a good ordinance.
I'm glad I put it on the agenda. Anybody have any further questions on that? So item C is Swanson Park. One of these days, getting a meeting with the veterans. I don't know what, and the shrub removal. I don't know if we're kind of.
I can't believe those shrubs are still there. I'm getting ready just to go pull them out and just be like, oh, sorry, I thought we were doing this already. I missed the memo.
I think Public Works trimmed them back quite significantly.
That I don't know. I haven't
Yeah.
been down that way, or I haven't turned my head to look
Public
while
Works
driving down that way.
Took a decent amount of the greens or they trimmed them off. Let's just put it that way. And you can actually see most of them or the monuments now, not most of them, all of them.
I mean, at this point, I would say since we included it in the CIF grant, there's no sense in scheduling anything unless we suddenly discover that we've got $100 and some thousand of funding to get it done.
Right.
And if we don't get it, we can still discuss meeting again and
Right,
see what
because
we
I
can
think
do, but.
our thought was, let's just at least ask before they're yanked out, so it won't be a situation that we didn't know you were gonna do it, or that somebody's memorial shrub or something.
I know, but the thing is you always, this is what happens, we make things look nice and everyone's like, no, keep the bushes. Well, only because we made them look nice. If we let them go to crap, they're like, yeah, you're gonna get those bushes, and we can't even see any of those monuments. So now we just appeased them, we made it look nice, and this will be on the agenda in 2030, I'm sure of it. I'm glad I won't be here, but those bushes will be.
No, they won't.
Oh, they will.
No, they
The
won't.
unfortunate part is we don't trim them up, and that's a disrespect to the, let's. So,
It is,
double-edged
but,
sword.
right, I'll get rid of them, we don't have to have.
Well, now that we know that at least for a few years while the current staff are in place. Now that we know there's monuments behind them.
Yeah, you just thought they were bushes.
For a little while.
Yeah.
All right. Then moving on to ongoing committee business, Blaine Road intersection. And that's still scheduled for the fall.
As far as we know,
Once the granite curb comes in.
yeah, as far as we know, Armand and company are coming back sometime after Labor Day. We haven't had a direct contact with them because, you know, how often are we going to say, still coming after Labor Day? Still coming
Right,
after Labor Day?
right.
So,
Yeah, because a lot of these items on the ongoing committee business are kind of just on there, so if we have new things to talk about. This one is status quo then.
oh, I did send an email after that. We all met to all the chiefs to say, hey, we figured this out. Just to let you know, you're still going to be able to pull up and draft. I did get a bounce back from Matt Whipple's email. So and he's actually the chief of the department who needs to know most, but, or one of the two departments, but I did send that after we all met down there.
All right, B River Mill. We did talk about the ordinance. I think that's probably the most.
Yeah, the meeting that, the public meeting that we had answered, whoever was there. Gave a good update on where that was all
Yeah,
situated and challenges that John has and what they're waiting for, so it is moving positively ahead.
yeah, that was a good meeting. Anybody else?
I mean, nothing else new until some document or other is signed.
Right. Well, yeah, so you're still waiting for that $2 million remediation grant final signature.
I am, but it's
Oh,
all
boy.
the document chain and Pam and Ken are working on it with, I think the DECD lawyer's name is Randy Sabia.
Okay,
So it's what it's in the lawyer's hands.
all right. That'll probably still be on. A couple months.
That's why I'm not saying that. Mom's the word.
C 630 Riverside Drive, any? Anything happening on that?
Well, that's another thing. I think the River Mill unlocks that. In the meantime, it's, you know, we've had some people try to contact the owner. They get essentially nowhere, and then they say, well, this is too much work. And so, you know, 929 unlocks 630 because our options broaden considerably.
Right. Anybody else have any comments on that one? Then moving on to 65 Main Street. How's, I know different things were going out to bid, roofs and.
Roof is going to start probably right after Labor Day. That Norway maple is going to come down. Joe is getting me quotes because apparently Josh can't can't do something of that size or isn't doing the tree work anymore. So no longer will thousands of invasive Norway maples be dropping from the front of Main Street. We are going to be awarding the hazmat abatement and demo bid on Tuesday. I'm going to tell you guys all right now, it's going to be massive sticker shock. What the architect told us to anticipate was way lowballed. This is going to eat a big chunk of the remaining money in the federal grant. But again, the CIF grant is out there and the funding gap stuff was requested in that. So fingers crossed on that grant for a lot of things. if that CIF grant doesn't come through, I've already sort of put a drop in Murphy's and Blumenthal's aide's ear that, how do we expand this? You know, I may need to come talk to you, and, you know, they're expecting me at some point to come back and talk to them about that. So that's kind of okay. The other piece on 65 Main is the programming part. We are out to bid on the permaculture consultant. I know we received one bid really early by mail. We had 3 people come to visit on a site walk, and they're going to open those bids on Tuesday as well. In fact, I need to make sure Marie knows that's on the agenda too.
It was.
It was, okay. So that'll be kind of cool. We'll start getting the landscaping for the back 3.2 acres accomplished. And then in October, we're going to launch the year-long public workshop to talk about how the facility is going to operate. We were actually supposed to have a partners con call this Wednesday. I postponed it to next Wednesday because I was on vacation and I just wasn't prepared. But so that's going to be, you know, me and Teague and Connecticut RC&D and ECCD and the permaculture consultant and John Guzkowski sort of running this year-long monthly workshop, just like some of the other things we've done. How do we want this to serve our needs? You know, well, what are the needs? And then how do we serve them? How are we going to how is it going to be made sustainable financially? And then after the year-long process, I take 6 months with the partners, we write a plan, and then we go out for more grant money to actually get it operational. So all of these things are going to be happening more or less simultaneously. So a lot of activity.
So does it seem like there's enough money for the roof and the
Yes,
hazardous building?
yes.
Okay.
And
Well, at least
after that,
those
we
two
don't
are-
know.
Yeah, so those are 2 important components.
And it needs to be said, we had the option of taking a slightly lower bid on, it's the lowest bidder, but there was an option built in to deduct scraping and encapsulation on the exterior and do a different sort of lower threshold level. But Santos and I talked about it, and given what's happened in Putnam, and it's a municipal building, we're not going to cut a single corner on the hazmat abatement, even though it's going to take us right to the edge of the grant money we have. It's just not worth it. It's just
Right.
not worth it. So that's what it's going to be.
All right. All right, thanks for that update. Does anybody have any questions for Tara in the Zoom audience?
Well, Tira, the hazmat abatement, I can't imagine there's a whole lot of asbestos in there other than perhaps in the heating system. So are they talking about de-leading the whole building?
It's mostly lead, yeah. Interior and exterior. I mean, the interior is a total gut. So whatever's in the interior, which is obviously mostly lead with some asbestos and some other stuff here and there. But
They're gonna have to tent the building to get all the paint off the outside. Is that what's going on?
the specifics of the abatement, I would have to go back and look at the proposal, but
Okay,
it
don't
will
worry about it.
certainly, it will certainly involve plastic sheeting and scraping and encapsulation and hauling to an appropriate facility. Like
Yeah,
everything is going to be correct because none of us want that black eye.
okey doke.
All right, then the last thing I have under ongoing committee business is any updates on the Main Street reconstruction? But I mean, I believe basically we're just waiting for the funding to come through, right? There's really,
Yeah, I mean,
No
it was,
update that we
Yang
have.
submitted it to LOTSIP ages ago, but as we know, that program is years behind in terms of their available funding. And so our best bet is everything's on this, this $3.8 million. Which again, you know, I was really encouraged when I got so many questions right before I left for vacation, you know, to ask for clarification on items or additional layers of documentation. To me, that means they're taking it seriously. You know, I don't know how much the letters of support really matter, but it was a great suite of letters. It was Blumenthal, Courtney, Flexer, Gordon.
All right.
There were 11 of them. The developer of St. Joe's, the developer of Superior Bakery, Jewett City Savings Bank, who was the financer on that. Thompson Business Association. I don't know, it was a lot. It was a lot, and they were all really high quality statements. So I think they do read those. And I certainly think they look at the names on the signature line.
Were we like, did we consider get John to,
That was one of their questions was, because I actually,
because it affects the mill.
yeah, I actually flaked out on that. So one of their question responses, hey, why don't you have a letter of support from the developer of the mill? And I said, well, because I forgot. And, and within a couple of hours, I had one from John. So, yeah.
Because it impacts his project as well.
Oh, of course it does.
What EDC has done with granting money and everything, it all ties in.
Anyone have any further questions or comments on Main Street reconstruction?
Whenever it gets done, it's long overdue.
Right.
Mhm.
But I will say, speaking of long overdue and whenever it gets done, Fabian Road paving looks great. If anybody goes to that part of town.
The only thing we did, the public has to remember, that the roads through Main Street, when the speed picks up, remember what you asked for.
Well, and actually, now that you mentioned that, a couple of people who live in the Carriage Square there have come up to me to ask, have we considered a speed bump? Which is not in our plan, but I am going to go back to Yu Yang once we're ready to move forward and say we should consider a speed bump here.
It being a connector road and putting in a speed bump may not be legal.
Well, we'll find out. And if it's not, it's not. But if it is legal, that is a very good way to slow people down. And not at the other end. I don't think it's necessary at the other end because nobody's turning at speed off of Riverside or off of Main. But yeah, you're coming 40 miles an hour down Riverside. Even a normally cautious driver isn't going to slow down suddenly to 20 or 15 miles an hour naturally. They've got to be passively persuaded to do so. So.
Or Yu Yang might even have another idea, like one of those speed limit things, because the speed bumps, the one thing you have to plan those out where the drainage is, because they're like a dam in the road for ice in the winter. So, there's certain places, so you can't just like say, okay, we're gonna put one here where we want the cars to slow down. It also has to work with like the drainage and everything else. But Yu Yang might have some ideas with pavement markings or.
Just throw out a nail strip.
Or some other kind of traffic cone. Traffic
Nate,
calming.
going back to when we talked about redoing the intersection at Buckley Hill and 12, we'll be doing a rotary there.
Well, as
That naturally slows it down.
as that development picks up, obviously in River Mill, but also the North Grosvenor Pond and Quinn's Shirt Shop. I talked to Mike Licamelli the other day. And they should be getting, I know, I told him, I heard you grilled him.
Like, hello, what are you doing?
Uh,
Well, he came to look at the mill. And I'm looking at him thinking, why do you look so familiar? So then he started talking, he goes in the, the 6/3, is that 6/3? No,
962.
962. And I'm like, do you own that? And he's like, yeah. I said, what are you doing? He gave me permission to go put the, what is that?
He's doing apartments over
In the
shops.
back, no,
Yeah.
but in the back, he wanted.
Oh,
solar.
the
He
solar,
Gave you that because you said when you got that done, you were working on the front, you've done absolutely nothing. He's like, well, I said, no, that was years ago, like we said 2 years, I mean, is this what you're doing, nothing? He's like, no, I got, trying to find work, I said, I know the story, but get moving, like, do something on it. Looks like a junkyard.
We need to send Charlene to all of the
Yeah.
developers.
But his hangup has been he didn't own the 50 acres until recently.
But that wasn't his hang up when he came.
Well, it's not that recent anymore. He's
Yeah.
owned it for over a year now.
Now.
What he tells me, is that his guys are gonna get over there to finish their interior work soon.
Mhm.
He's having trouble finding somebody to do the exterior
Right.
work.
I said, well, come local, come into town.
I think he's
and-
trying.
Well, There's enough people that are looking for work. I'll give him some names. I told him, we have people, use the people here, get it done. He's like, I'll be on that, I'll be on that. I'm like, okay.
He's supposed to be coming in or calling me next week with some other stuff, so
Okay.
I will, I give him a little to every time I talk to him. He knows we're waiting. At least the taxes are up to date.
Well, we had naturally segued into other new committee business. So does anybody have any? Ryan isn't here, so if anybody has any other things that they want to bring up for the committee to work on or
Mostly
statuses of other.
informative. Amy asked me 2 days ago to submit a steep grant for the high school track.
Okay,
So I'm working on that right now.
What was that? I missed it.
Yeah, steep grants are open until a week from today. And the high school track would be an eligible project. Now, we're only eligible to receive up to $500,000. It's like a $1.5 million project, but that means when we bond, we'll be bonding for more than the 20% minimum match. That works in our favor. It's shovel ready. It affects the quality of the school and the quality of the neighborhood. So it's a pretty good candidate.
And I will confess that it's late because initially I targeted in my mind, when the steep grant opened up again, I targeted the public works route. But we knew that we probably wouldn't have enough cash because we had attempted to put $100,000 in the budget and it got cut back to 50. So then this week, I think it was on Monday, it was like, wait a second, the track.
That's right.
So Tara, as always, is going to come through and let's hope.
Well, it's really, a lot of it is Brian Santos coming
Yeah.
through for us before, because he has such good documentation and the building committee did such a good job getting the shovel-ready plans completed. And we already laid the groundwork with the town meeting and resolution in January. So even though it passed by a whisker, it passed. So we can show that we are approved to bond for up to the full amount. So we're going to ask to bond for 2/3 and get 1/3 of it covered. Ultimately, that's less money for the taxpayers than we were originally proposing. So if it's successful, I think that's a win.
great.
And Amy is also going to be talking to Eversource. May as well bring that up.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That was good. Well, I had a developer come into my office and Tara happened to be, we were actually in a meeting at the time. And he would like to move the John M. Dean Company from Putnam to Thompson. Problem being, Thompson doesn't have natural gas. I've been in discussions with Eversource pretty much ever since I took office, trying to see how do we get gas? How do we get natural gas here so that in this case, this manufacturing company uses natural gas to finish the product that they produce, which I can't remember exactly what it was.
There's some kind of pins and fittings.
Yeah.
It's a light manufacturing company.
Right. So again, I'm knocking on the door because in this case, it's only 2 miles approximately from the line where the gas ends. So hoping to at least get the construction team of Eversource to Thompson so we can sit down with not only this developer or this manufacturer, but also Nutmeg Container, which was the original company that was requesting natural gas.
A more likely scenario, though, and you saw, I'm sure I copied you on it, is Jason LaValle's 60-unit townhouse development, which is very close to the Putnam line. That starts to create an economy of scale of things that could tap in. And we have also suggested to this gentleman that he contact Standish Johnson, who owns that grassed 24 acres. Because if his target property can't be made feasible, you're talking about less than a mile of expanding the line. If that, could be, it's not on the market, it would have to be an off-market offer.
Yeah, I've talked to that guy years ago.
Yeah,
And he was not interested in doing anything but leaving it as a hayfield. Of course, this
That's
is
interesting.
20 years ago, but
I don't think they're haying it.
no, he wants his billboard exposed and he doesn't want anything there that's gonna impede upon his billboard.
Interesting. Well, so we can probably assume that that won't happen, but
Yeah.
you know, we suggested they look into it. And there might be some other parcels that we're not thinking about on that stretch of Route 12 that are a little closer. But he does have a parcel that's on the market now that he's currently looking at. And he's talking about a 3 to 4 year process to move regardless. So it's not like we make this happen and all of a sudden we've got gas tomorrow. Yeah, 3 to 4 years down the line at least.
But it will be really interesting to see how Eversource deals with that, because like I know like Connecticut water is so difficult to deal with if you want them to expand, like, you know, the customer has to pay for everything, even if they're getting all kind of other side customers, but as users, they want you.
They can't pass along the cost of construction onto the current users. So that's one of the issues with expanding water and natural gas. So current users can't be penalized because they want to do a construction project. So it has to be funded, either they can prove that there's going to be enough generation of use to warrant the spending the money for the expansion, for the construction, or it's dead in the water, or the person, the person building the properties has to pay.
I wouldn't be surprised if DECD has some grants of private partnership grants available for that kind of thing.
Well, that would make sense, because that's what's gonna spur economic development,
Right.
is
Yeah.
getting the necessary utilities.
I wouldn't be
In-
surprised at all, like
infrastructure.
if the developer, you know, fronts 50%, I mean, because 50% is 50% kind of thing, and then, you know, the town is the lead or something. I mean, that's common enough.
So where would the natural gas be coming from Putnam?
Yeah,
Yes?
yes,
Yes.
yes, that would be the goal. So Nutmeg probably, I don't see an avenue for for Nutmeg, I just don't, but,
Yes,
and I know how much they
hard.
want
And
it.
it can't come from Massachusetts, which is crazy, but no.
Yeah, so if it were successful, a short stretch of Route 12 would have access to natural gas. And presumably the existing properties would also have the option to tie in.
Would the treatment plant benefit in any way?
So,
Would there be
I don't-
Well, maybe, I mean, how are they heating?
energy?
oh, maybe with heating.
Yeah,
I mean,
That'd be something.
that's a small building. I don't know if they could. You know, they're just thinking of
I mean,
existing.
The biggest usage is electricity.
I think the benefit to that would be, and I'm just sort of gaming this out now spontaneously, if it was a grant situation where it was public-private partnership and we wanted to say, yes, we want to connect our municipal building, and here's this private residential development, and here's this private developer, here's the pool of match funding that we're presenting. DECD, please help us have infrastructure. I think that becomes sort of, each one of those pieces strengthens that argument, and that's assuming that such a grant exists. I don't know. I just think it's likely.
The best way to tie it in is if John Thumper could use it.
That's a lot more than 2 miles, though.
Only looking at DECD money and everything and running it up 12.
I will consider that at a later time.
The road can.
Then Main Street.
That's about normal. Everything gets paid and then they rip the road up. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think unless anybody has any other comments to add, I think we can wrap it up and adjourn our meeting and see everybody next month. Yeah, this meeting is adjourned at 9:44.
Hey, kids.